Some schools don't just teach, they hide. And sometimes a teacher's smile doesn't protect a child's future, but rather conceals a dark world buried deep beneath the surface. When President Ibrahim Traoré noticed the signs, it wasn't just a school that had started to rot, it was an entire system. In one of Africa's most remote villages, there stood a quiet little primary school. Not many students, not many teachers, but it was a place locals spoke of with respect. Until one day, a man named Mr. Doumbia arrived. Charismatic, well-dressed, diploma in hand. He handed out candy to children, made grand promises to villagers, even drank tea with the mayor. But something else caught Traoré's eye. Right behind the school, hidden among the flattened earth, was a massive pit. No sign, no construction permit. And every night as the village slept, large trucks would creep silently into the schoolyard. This didn't come to Traoré by chance. It came through a secret tip-off. But the real warning wasn't from the trucks. It was from a child. An anonymous letter sent to the presidential office read, "The teacher goes into the basement every night. My father doesn't smile anymore. This school doesn't feel like a school anymore." Traoré disguised himself. He brought only one person, former teacher, now security advisor, Fatou Diallo. When they arrived in the village, they were met with silence. And silence sometimes is deadlier than bombs. As Traoré walked through the classrooms, everything looked normal, until he spotted a child's textbook. The cover was new, but inside it was empty. Between the blank pages, a folded piece of paper peeked out. It wasn't just a school map, it was a mining blueprint, an old plan tracing underground gold veins, and the boldest red circle on the map, it was drawn right where the school stood. So what was really happening inside this rural classroom? And who was Mr. Doumbia? Just a teacher, or something far more dangerous? Stay with us, because in this story, not all lessons come from teachers. President Ibrahim Traoré couldn't shake off the image of that red circle on the old map he found in the classroom. It wasn't just a mark, it was a warning. And his instincts, sharpened by years of experience, whispered loud and clear, "What's beneath this school runs deeper than what's above it." When night fell, Traoré made his move. Only Fatou was by his side. They slipped quietly into the school. The power was out, and every step creaked on the old wooden floors. It didn't take long to find the basement door, but it was locked. Calmly, Fatou pulled a thin piece of wire from her bag and worked the lock. Just a few seconds. Click. The door creaked open. Inside, darkness swallowed them whole. But sometimes the truth is clearest in the dark. Mining tools lined the walls, thin plastic sacks coated in golden dust were stacked on the ground, and on a dusty table, an open ledger. It listed nightly shipments, dates, quantities, even license plate numbers. As Fatou flipped through the pages, she gasped. Her eyes had landed on a shelf tucked into the corner. Hidden among elementary school books were hollowed-out volumes, inside each GPS trackers, encrypted documents, and in one, the true identity of Mr. Doumbia. He was a former employee of a defunct mining company. After being removed from his post, he vanished without a trace. But in the documents, one chilling note stood out: reassigned as an educator to manipulate local communities. Operation School Gold. At that moment, everything clicked for Traoré, but something was still missing. Doumbia wasn't acting alone. An operation this large couldn't be pulled off by a single man. This was organized crime. Fatou whispered, "What do we do now, Mr. President?" Traoré stared down at the map and replied, "We can pull the net until the biggest fish takes the bait. We wait and we watch." That night they left the school as quietly as they came. But one thing was now painfully clear. This wasn't just gold smuggling. It was a betrayal, one that buried the future of children beneath the earth. Night had fallen once again. But this time, Traoré and Fatou hadn't returned just to investigate. They were ready to go deeper. Sneaking in through a small storage room behind the school building, they found their way back to the basement. But tonight, something new caught their attention. A faint airflow, barely noticeable in the dark, as if the room was being ventilated from somewhere. Fatou felt along the wall's edge. One of the stones gave slightly inward. A soft click echoed. Then, grinding metal, a hidden mechanism activated. Slowly, part of the wall slid sideways. A tunnel now opened before Traoré. It was narrow but solid, reinforced with concrete and lit by dim bulbs overhead. They walked in silence for several minutes until they emerged into a larger chamber. This wasn't a school basement anymore, this was an underground mining command center. Inside were gold bars, scales, plastic containers, and various mineral analysis devices. Security cameras were mounted on the walls, though most were inactive. The system looked hastily abandoned or damaged. Among the tangled wires, a small screen blinked faintly. Fatu powered it on. Several digital files appeared. Email printouts, encrypted code sheets, and most damning of all, GPS logs from trucks marked as educational supply deliveries, concealing actual gold shipments. Traoré locked his eyes on a name that flashed across several documents: GNL, International Logistics. The company was known for its involvement in humanitarian aid across the region. This wasn't just local corruption, it was a multinational smuggling cover-up. Fatu whispered, "Mr. President, the school was just a surface. There's an entire world hidden beneath it." Traoré nodded grimly. "And now, it's time to drag that world into the light." But there was one final chilling discovery. In a drawer, nestled among scattered files, was a handwritten note addressed to the children. "If you stay quiet, nothing will happen to your mother." Fatu's face went pale. This wasn't just a crime. It was a regime built on fear. And now it wasn't just about justice. It was about protecting the children. The morning sun lit up the village's dusty paths like gold. But today, that light wouldn't reveal treasure. It would reveal truth. President Traoré had made up his mind. He wouldn't strike with brute force alone, but with a meticulously planned trap. A public event was announced in the village, a celebration at the school under the banner of the President's Education Development Program. The locals were invited, the students had rehearsed, and of course, Mr. Doumbia was there, front and center, wearing a plastic smile as he strolled between the children. Everything seemed normal, but tension lingered in the air like static before a storm. Traoré stood quietly among the villagers, dressed in plain clothes. The event began with children stepping onto the stage, reciting poems from memory. The crowd applauded warmly. Then the microphone was handed to Doumbia. He smiled, called out a few students by name, and began his speech. This village, a land brave enough to entrust its future to education. Just then, the curtain beside the stage was pulled aside. President Ibrahim Traoré stepped out, flanked by Fatu and several members of the special forces. A ripple of gasps spread through the crowd. Some people stood in disbelief. Doumbia turned pale. Traoré reached directly for the microphone. "Today, we're going to learn what real education looks like." He raised his hand. Armed units immediately moved toward the back of the school. The cameras were already rolling. Within minutes, the soldiers returned, carrying boxes pulled from the basement. Inside, gold bars, mining documents, and GPS trackers. The audience was frozen. The children looked on, confused and frightened. Doumbia stood silent, throat dry, unable to speak. The microphone was still on. Traoré turned toward him and said, "You haven't been teaching education here. You've been teaching betrayal." Flashes erupted from the press cameras. The truth could no longer be hidden. The entire nation would soon witness the footage, not just of smuggled gold, but of a system's deep-rooted decay. But Traoré knew this was only the tip of the iceberg. Just a day ago, no one could have imagined there was a gold mine hidden beneath a tiny village school. But now, the entire country was glued to their screens. News channels, social media, and every headline spoke of one name: President Ibrahim Traoré and the secret operation he led. Footage from the moment of the raid went viral within seconds. The hashtag number sign School of Gold topped the trending charts. People were stunned. How could a criminal disguised as a teacher hide among children for years? Yet what resonated even more deeply was Traoré's calm composure and tactical brilliance. After his arrest, Mr. Doumbia made a chilling statement. "I was just the courier. The real owners, they're higher up." That confession changed everything. This was no longer just about one corrupt teacher. It was the first thread in a much larger web, revealing connections that reach deep within the state. Traoré immediately launched a sweeping investigation. A transnational gold smuggling network had been exposed, and that village school was just the beginning. When Traoré stepped in front of the press, he stood with the students behind him. The fear once visible on their faces had faded, replaced by hope. He held the microphone and declared, "Stealing education is stealing a nation's future, but from now on no darkness will be able to hide our light." The school's name was changed. A new sign was raised reading "Guardians of Knowledge Primary School," for those who teach what's priceless. The children were safe now, but for Traoré this wasn't an end, it was a beginning. Because Africa's true gold wasn't buried in the earth, it shimmered in the eyes of its children.